The babysitter thought she was calling to complain, but when her voice breaks, the mafia boss realizes his son is alone. The door is locked, and someone else might already be inside. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe. The call came in during a meeting Victor Russo had already decided was a waste of time. Men around the table were arguing over percentages and territory, voices overlapping, egos flaring the way they always did when they thought power was something you could measure on paper. Victor sat at the head of the table, fingers steepled, expression unreadable, already halfway out of the room in his mind. Then his phone vibrated. Once. He ignored it. It vibrated again. Longer this time. Victor frowned slightly. Very few people had that number. Fewer still would dare call twice. He glanced at the unknown caller. He was about to silence it when it rang again, sharp, insistent, cutting cleanly through the noise of the room. "Enough," Victor said, his voice low but absolute. The room went silent instantly. He stood, already answering as he moved toward the door. This better be important. At first, all he heard was breathing, fast, uneven. The kind that came from someone trying not to cry and failing. I'm so sorry to call you," a woman's voice said, rushed and trembling. "I know you said only emergencies, but this is ridiculous. I feel so stupid." Victor stopped walking. The hallway outside the conference room was empty, the sound of the door closing behind him echoing faintly. "Who is this?" he asked. "It's Maya," she said quickly. "Your son's babysitter. I swear I'm not irresponsible. This has never happened before." Something in her tone snagged his attention. Not the words. The way she said them. Too defensive. Too fast. Like she was already expecting blame. "What happened?" Victor asked. There was a pause, then a shaky laugh that didn't sound like laughter at all. "He locked me out," she said. "It's stupid, I know. We were playing hide and seek, and he ran inside, and he locked the door. I think he thought it was part of the game." Victor closed his eyes briefly. "How long have you been outside?" he asked. "Only a few minutes," she said quickly. "Maybe 10? I've been knocking and calling his name, but he's not answering. He probably thinks it's funny." She tried to laugh again. Failed. Victor leaned against the wall, every instinct sharpening. "Is he alone inside?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "but the door is solid, and the building security, well, I thought I'd call you first before making it a whole thing." Her voice cracked on the last word. Victor straightened. "Why are you crying?" he asked quietly. Silence. Then, barely audible. "Because I heard something." Victor's grip tightened around the phone. "What did you hear?" Maya swallowed hard. "At first, just footsteps. I thought it was him running around. But then I heard a sound. Like a door inside the apartment opening." Victor's heart dropped into his stomach. "That doesn't make sense," she went on quickly, panic bleeding through now. "I mean, he's only 6. He can't reach the study door, and he knows he's not allowed in there." Victor was already moving. "Are you still outside the apartment?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm standing right in front of the door. I haven't left. I swear." "Good," Victor said. "Stay there." And he turned sharply, heading back toward the conference room. "Mr. Russo?" Maya said, her voice breaking completely now. "I tried calling his name again just now. He didn't answer, but I heard something else." Victor stopped mid-step. "What?" "Breathing," she whispered. Not his. Deeper. Slower. The hallway felt suddenly too narrow. "Listen to me," Victor said, his voice calm in a way that didn't match the violence igniting in his chest. "I need you to do exactly what I say." "I'm scared," Maya sobbed. "I know," he said. "But you did the right thing by calling me. You understand?" He pushed open the conference room door. Every man inside looked up at once. Victor didn't sit. He didn't explain. He looked at his second-in-command and said only 4 words, spoken with lethal clarity. "Get the car! Now!" Then into the phone, softer but iron hard beneath it. Maya, do not hang up. No matter what you hear, my son is not alone anymore. I'm coming. And for the first time in years, Victor Russo felt fear. Not for himself, not for his empire, but for the small boy who had locked a door, thinking it was a game, while something far darker had been waiting on the other side. The car hadn't even reached the end of the block when Victor tried calling his son. Once. Straight to voicemail. His thumb hovered for half a second before he tried again, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the rain-slicked street rushing past the windows. Still nothing. Maya, he said into the phone, keeping his voice level by force alone. I'm calling him now. Stay quiet and listen. She sniffed, trying to steady her breathing. Okay. The line clicked as Victor switched calls. He waited, counting the rings in his head. 1, 2, 3. No answer. A familiar automated voice chimed in cheerfully, grotesquely out of place. Victor ended the call before it could finish. He tried again. Nothing. His pulse thudded in his ears, each beat louder than the engine. Maya, he said, switching back. Are you sure he's not asleep? Yes, she said immediately. He was wide awake 5 minutes ago. He was laughing. He ran inside and yelled, "You can't catch me." Victor closed his eyes. And after that? I knocked, she said. I laughed at first. I thought he was being silly. But then he didn't answer. And then I heard... She stopped herself, breath hitching. I heard the floor creak. Slow. Heavy. Victor's fingers curled into his palm. That's not how he walks, she added, almost apologetically. He runs everywhere. He doesn't... pause. Victor pictured his son exactly as she described. Barefoot, light steps, constant motion. A child who never walked slowly unless he was hurt or scared. Are you still right at the door? Victor asked. Yes, my back is against it. Good, Victor said. Do not move. I'm trying not to, she whispered. But something just passed the hallway mirror. I saw the reflection. Victor's chest went cold. You're sure? Yes, she said, panic sharp now. I saw a shoulder. Not small, not his. Victor switched the call to speaker and looked up at the driver. Turn around, he said quietly. Now. The driver didn't ask why. He hit the accelerator. Victor pressed the phone closer to his mouth. Maya, I need you to answer one question very carefully. Oh, okay. Did you hear the locks click when the door closed behind you? She thought. Yeah, I think so. I heard the deadbolt. Victor exhaled through his nose. Those locks can't be engaged from the outside, he said. Which means... Someone was already inside, Maya finished, her voice breaking completely. Yes, Victor said. Silence swallowed the line for a heartbeat. Then, faintly, unmistakably, a sound filtered through the phone. A soft thud. Maya gasped. That was from inside. Victor's grip tightened. What kind of sound? He asked. Like something being set down. Carefully. Victor's mind raced. He catalogued the apartment in seconds. Layout, blind spots, the study door, the safe, the panic room his son didn't know existed. Or did he? Victor, Maya whispered, using his first name for the first time. I just heard him. His breath stopped. My son? No, she said. A man. He coughed. Victor's vision narrowed. Listen to me, he said, voice deadly calm. Do not knock again. Do not call out. Do not try to force the door. You stay exactly where you are. I'm scared he'll hurt him, she sobbed. So am I, Victor said honestly. That's why we're going to be smart. He tried calling his son again, praying this time would be different. Nothing. Inside his head, the world slowed to a razor's edge. Is there any noise now? Victor asked. Yes, Maya whispered. Footsteps. He's moving toward the living room, toward the windows. Victor glanced at the time. Too long. "Maya," he said, "if you hear screaming—" "I will," she said quickly. "I won't hang up. I promise." Victor nodded once, though she couldn't see it. The car screeched as it turned onto the main road, sirens wailing in the distance, his, not the city's. Victor leaned forward, elbows on knees, phone pressed to his ear, as if proximity alone could protect his child. The silence on the other line wasn't empty anymore. It was occupied. And every second it lasted told him one thing with terrifying clarity. Whatever was inside that apartment knew exactly how long it had before he arrived. Victor's other phone was already in his hand before he realized he'd reached for it. He didn't break the call with Maya. He wouldn't. Her breathing, ragged, uneven, was his only confirmation that time was still moving, that the world hadn't tipped fully into nightmare yet. "Stay with me," he said into the line, voice low and steady. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm not moving." Good. Victor tapped the screen and brought up the security interface. The apartment was protected by layers most people never knew existed, discrete cameras tucked into corners, feeds routed through private servers, redundancies stacked on redundancies. He had built it that way because of his life. Because enemies didn't knock. The app loaded. 4 camera feeds should have appeared immediately. Only 3 did. Victor's jaw tightened. Camera 1, the living room. Empty. Couch undisturbed. Toys scattered exactly where his son always left them. Camera 2, the kitchen. Still. The chair slightly pulled out from the table. A cup tipped on its side. Milk drying into a thin, white crescent on the counter. Camera 3, the hallway. Camera 4, offline. The one covering the study door. The one blind spot no one should have been able to access. Victor felt the cold settle in his spine. "Victor?" Maya whispered. "You went quiet." "I'm here," he said. "I'm looking." He enlarged the hallway feed. The angle was wrong. Not broken. Not cut. Tilted, just slightly upward, as if someone had nudged it on purpose. Enough to miss the floor. Enough to hide small movements. Enough to hide a child. Victor scanned every inch of the frame, eyes moving faster than the car beneath him. "Do you see him?" Maya asked desperately. "No," Victor said, "but that doesn't mean—" The feed flickered, just for a fraction of a second. Then something crossed the frame. Not fast, not clumsy. Deliberate. A shadow slid across the far wall, tall, narrow, shoulders squared. It paused, just long enough to be unmistakable. Not a child. Victor's pulse roared. "Maya," he said, voice tightening for the first time. "Listen to me very carefully." "I see it too," she whispered. The light just changed under the door. "Has he said anything?" Victor asked. "No," she said. "He's quiet." That was worse. Victor switched feeds again, scanning the living room. Nothing. Kitchen. Still nothing. "Victor," Maya whispered urgently. "I hear something else." "What?" "A drawer," she said. "Opening." Victor's mind snapped to the study. The safe. The one thing he had never shown his son. The one door he had assumed was enough. He cursed under his breath. The offline camera wasn't malfunctioning. It had been turned away. Someone knew the layout. Someone knew the systems. Someone had planned this. "Victor," Maya said, panic rising again. "What if he takes him? What if he—" "He won't," Victor cut in, not because he was certain, but because she needed him to be. "He won't." The car swerved violently as the driver took a turn too fast. "How far?" Victor demanded. 8 minutes, the driver said. 7 if traffic clears. It wasn't fast enough. Victor stared at the shadow frozen in his mind, the angle of the shoulders, the way it had paused. A man who wasn't rushing. A man who knew he had time. "Victor," Maya whispered suddenly. "I hear breathing again. Closer." Victor's hand trembled once before he stilled it. "Is it near the door?" he asked. Yes. Then listen to me, Victor said, voice dropping into something lethal and controlled. If that door handle moves, even a little, you run. You scream. You do not look back. I can't leave him, she sobbed. You can't help him if you're dead, Victor said flatly. And I need you alive. The hallway camera flickered again. This time, the shadow leaned closer to the lens, close enough that Victor saw it wasn't an accident. The camera had been spared deliberately. A message. Someone wanted him to know. Victor ended the call with Maya for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to send one message. Lock down everything. No sirens. No uniforms. He's inside. When he returned to the line, Maya was crying openly now. He's humming, she whispered, like he's not in a hurry. Victor closed his eyes. He had crushed men for less. But this was personal. The camera hadn't been turned away to hide. It had been turned away so Victor would understand one thing with absolute clarity. This wasn't a mistake. It was an invitation. And whoever had walked into his home had just declared war, using the one thing Victor could never replace. The moment Victor ended the call, the world narrowed to a single, merciless point. His son. Everything else. Meetings scheduled weeks in advance. Men waiting on his word. Alliances balanced on the edge of favor and fear, collapsed into irrelevance. The rules he had written for himself over decades of survival no longer applied. Protocol existed to protect power. This was about blood. Turn around, Victor said to the driver. The car was already moving at illegal speed through the city's arteries, tires hissing against wet asphalt. The driver didn't ask where. He didn't need to. The tension in Victor's voice carried a weight no explanation could improve. As the vehicle cut across lanes, Victor's fingers flew over his phone. No shouting, no panic. The orders he gave were quiet, precise, and infinitely more dangerous than screaming commands. Block the surrounding streets. Civilian patterns only. No lights, no badges. A pause. A confirmation. Access building management. Freeze elevators. Kill external cameras. I want silence. Another pause. Another yes. 3 teams. Inside approach only. No forced entry unless I say so. He stopped typing for half a second, jaw clenching. And if you see him before I do nothing. That last order was the one that mattered. Victor leaned back, eyes closed, breath measured. He forced his heart to slow because panic wasted time, and time was the only thing he didn't have enough of. Images flashed behind his eyes without permission. Small hands gripping his jacket when thunder cracked too close. A sleepy voice asking for water at 2 a.m. The way his son said Papa, like it was the safest word he knew. Victor had built an empire to make sure nothing ever touched that child. And now someone had stepped inside his home and tested the one boundary he would kill to defend. The car fishtailed as it turned onto his street. Snow had begun to fall, thin, deceptive flakes that softened the city while making the roads treacherous. Victor barely noticed. His focus was already ahead, on the building rising at the end of the block like a fortress that had failed its one job. He remembered the last time he'd left that apartment. His son had waved from the window, pajamas too big, hair sticking up, smile crooked and perfect. I'll be back before you sleep, Victor had promised. A lie, he realized now, burning hot in his chest. The car screeched to a halt. Victor was out before it fully stopped. He didn't wait for doors to open or men to move. He crossed the sidewalk at a run, coat flaring, boots crunching into fresh snow. The lobby doors slid open silently, already overridden. Inside, everything was wrong. Too quiet. The lights were dimmed lower than usual. The security desk sat empty, chair pushed back as if someone had stood up in a hurry and never returned. Victor's instincts screamed. He took the stairs 3 at a time, ignoring the elevator entirely. Each floor passed in a blur, breath steady, muscles burning, mind locked into a single command. Get there. Halfway up, his phone vibrated again. A single message. Inside unit. Child unharmed. He's still here. Victor didn't slow down. If anything, he moved faster. At his door, he didn't reach for keys. He kicked it in. The sound cracked through the hallway like a gunshot. Inside Izolny, chaos waited. A chair overturned, a lamp smashed. The air thick with the metallic tang of fear, and something darker, cologne that didn't belong, the echo of another man's presence. And from down the hall, a sound, not crying, breathing, too controlled. Victor stepped forward, every sense sharpened to a blade. His hand was steady now, the way it always was right before violence. He rounded the corner and saw his son. Curled behind the couch, knees drawn up, eyes wide but dry. Silent the way children become when they've learned noise is dangerous. Victor dropped to his knees without thinking. "Hey," he whispered, voice breaking through iron restraint. "Papa's here." The boy moved then, fast, desperate, throwing himself into Victor's arms with a sob that tore straight through him. "I stayed quiet," his son whispered. "Like you said." Victor closed his eyes, holding him so tight it hurt. "I know," he murmured. "You did perfect." Behind them, a floorboard creaked. Victor didn't turn. He didn't need to. His men flooded the apartment in silence, weapons raised, movements precise. No shouting, no struggle. Just the soft, terrifying efficiency of people who understood exactly what their boss would do if they failed. Victor rose slowly, his son cradled against his chest, one hand protectively over the back of the small head. He finally looked at the man standing frozen near the study door. The intruder's face had gone pale, because he recognized Victor, and in that moment, he understood something too late. This was no longer a job. This was a father who had been forced to choose. And Victor Vallon didn't choose mercy when it came to his child. The hallway felt colder than it should have. Maya stood barefoot on the marble tiles, her coat pulled tight around her shoulders, phone clutched in both hands as if it were the only thing anchoring her to reality. The door in front of her looked the same as it always had. Dark wood, brushed steel handle, a faint scratch near the lock from when the moving crew had been careless months ago. But it was no longer her way back in. She tried the handle again. Locked. She pressed her ear to the door, heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her skull. At first, there was nothing. Just the distant hum of the building's ventilation, the faint whine of wind outside. Then, so faint she almost convinced herself she imagined it, there was a sound. A soft thud. Not loud, not sudden. Like a foot being set down carefully. Maya sucked in a breath and stepped back. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She knocked. Lightly at first, the way you knock when you don't want to wake a sleeping child. "Sweetheart," she called, voice trembling. "It's Maya. I'm right here." Silence. Her fingers shook as she tried the keypad again, entering the code Victor had given her months ago. It beeped once. Red light. Access denied. Her stomach dropped. "That's not possible," she whispered. "That's not possible." Victor changed codes constantly, but never without telling her, never without warning, and never while his son was inside. Unless. The thought finished itself in her mind, sharp and icy. Unless someone else had done it. She knocked harder this time, panic leaking into every movement. Hey, it's okay. Open the door, okay? Just open it for me." Nothing. Her phone buzzed in her hand, making her flinch so hard she nearly dropped it. "Victor!" She answered instantly. "I can't get in," she blurted, words tumbling over each other. "The lock, it's changed. I swear it's changed. And he's not answering me anymore." On the other end, there was a pause. Not long, not dramatic. Just long enough for her to know something had shifted. "Maya," Victor said calmly, too calmly. "Step away from the door." "What?" she whispered. "No, I can't. He's inside. He's alone." "I know," Victor said. "And that's why you need to listen to me." Her chest tightened. Victor, please, I hear things. I know, he repeated. And that's why you are not going back in. She pressed her back against the opposite wall, sliding down until she was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest. Her breath came in shallow gasps now, tears spilling freely. I should have stayed inside, she sobbed. I just went to take out the trash. I was gone for 2 minutes. 2 minutes. You did nothing wrong, Victor said, and for the first time she heard something crack beneath the control in his voice. Do you understand me? She shook her head even though he couldn't see her. I left him. You protected him by calling me, Victor said. That may have saved his life. That word, life, hit her like a blow. Maya squeezed her eyes shut. I hear something, she whispered suddenly. It's not him. It's too heavy. Where are you standing? Victor asked. By the stairs, she said. I moved away from the door like you said. Good, he replied. Stay there. Do not go back. Do not shout. Do not draw attention. Her gaze flicked to the security camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling. The little red light that was always on. It was dark. Her breath hitched. Victor, she whispered. The camera. It's off. I know, he said. That terrified her more than anything else. She hugged her knees tighter, rocking slightly now, trying to stay quiet the way the child inside always was. Time stretched painfully, each second a sharp edge. Then a sound. Soft, almost polite. A click from the door. Maya froze. The handle didn't turn. The door didn't open. But from the other side, something shifted, like a lock being tested, like someone checking their work. Maya clapped a hand over her mouth to stop herself from screaming. Victor, she breathed. He's still there. I'm almost home, Victor said. And whoever locked that door from the inside made a very serious mistake. The hallway lights flickered once, then settled. The door in front of her remained closed, and somewhere behind it, a child waited, silent, because he had learned that sometimes the door not opening was the only thing keeping the bad thing out. And Maya prayed, harder than she ever had, that help would come before that lesson cost him everything. The apartment no longer felt like a home. Victor stood just inside the threshold, his son asleep against his chest now, small breaths warm through the fabric of Victor's coat. One of his men had draped a blanket over the boy without being asked. Another had silently righted the overturned chair. They moved with care, like men who suddenly understood they were standing inside something sacred. Victor didn't look at them. His eyes were on the details. The things that didn't belong. The front door's lock panel was open, the casing removed with professional neatness. No scratches, no rushed damage. Whoever had done it hadn't forced entry. They had replaced it. Quietly, efficiently. From the inside. Victor handed his son to Luca, his most trusted lieutenant, without a word. Luca took the child as if he were made of glass, nodding once, jaw tight. I've got him, Luca said softly. Victor stepped fully into the apartment. Every instinct he had screamed the same truth. This wasn't random. He walked slowly now, cataloging. Years of surviving betrayal had trained his eye to read rooms the way other men read faces. The study door was ajar. It was never ajar. Inside, the safe stood open. Empty. Not looted. Not torn apart. Opened. Victor exhaled through his nose, slow and controlled. They knew the code, he said. Luca stiffened. Only 4 people. And one of them is standing in this room, Victor finished flatly. He moved to the kitchen. The trash bin was empty. Too empty. Maya had said she'd gone out to take the trash. That was always her routine. Same time, same order. Victor had noticed because patterns were how you kept people safe. Someone else had noticed too. The balcony door was unlocked. Victor stopped there, fingers curling slowly. Scan the exterior, he ordered. Roof, fire escape, adjacent units. His men moved instantly. Victor turned back to the hallway. The camera tilt was deliberate, subtle, done by someone who knew exactly how much movement would avoid triggering alerts, while still creating a blind zone. "This wasn't a burglar," Luca said quietly behind him. "It's someone who's been here before." Victor didn't answer. He crouched near the couch and noticed something that made his chest tighten painfully. A small toy car lay on its side near the baseboard. It had been moved. His son never took it into the hallway. Never. He played with it only here, where Victor had told him it was safe to be loud. Someone had picked it up and put it down again. Testing. Learning. Victor stood slowly. "They knew the babysitter's timing," he said. "They waited until she stepped out. Not before. Not after." Luca swallowed. "That means they were watching." "Yes," Victor said. "And listening." A tablet buzzed softly in one of the men's hands. "Sir," the man said carefully, "we pulled maintenance logs. There was a work order 3 weeks ago. Intermittent sensor failure. Signed off as resolved." Victor turned. "Who approved it?" The man hesitated. "Internal contractor. Subcontracted through a shell company." Victor nodded once. There it was. The confirmation. Someone had mapped the house from the inside out. Cameras, locks, routines, weak points. Someone had waited patiently, watching a child and a caregiver, learning how long it took to take out the trash, learning when the door would be unguarded. Victor felt something cold and ancient settle into his bones. This wasn't about money. This was about leverage. "He didn't panic," Luca said quietly. "The man inside, he hummed. Maya said so." Victor closed his eyes for one brief second. That detail mattered. Men who panic make noise. They rush. They make mistakes. Men who hum feel in control. "Find out who's been watching my house," Victor said, voice low and lethal. "Everyone who's been within 50 meters in the last month. Cameras, traffic, delivery logs. I want names." "Yes, sir." Victor turned toward the bedroom. The doorframe bore a faint scuff mark near the handle, at adult height. Someone had leaned there, waiting. Victor reached out and steadied himself on the wall, breath slow but heavy. He pictured his son alone in this space, quiet, obedient, small, waiting for someone to come back. A sound escaped Victor then, so soft none of the men pretended to hear it. Not a sob, a vow. "Anyone who knew my house," he said finally, opening his eyes, "will learn what it means to step inside it uninvited." Luca looked at him carefully. "And the child?" Victor turned toward where his son slept in Luca's arms, blanket pulled up, face peaceful now that danger had passed. "No one ever gets that close to him again," Victor said. "Not ever." Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, the house held its breath, because someone had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and Victor Valen was done pretending this world played by rules when it came to his child. They found him where no one would have thought to look unless they knew the fear that had taught him. Not under the bed, not in the closet, not curled behind the couch like a child playing hide-and-seek. He was hidden inside the false wall behind the utility cabinet in the hallway bathroom, a narrow space meant for pipes and wiring, accessed by a panel so flush it disappeared when closed. A space Victor himself had never opened. A space his son had learned to use long before this night. It was Luca who noticed it first. He had been moving slowly, checking corners, hands gentle despite the tension in his shoulders. When he brushed past the cabinet, his knuckles grazed the panel, and it shifted a fraction of an inch. Too easily. "Victor," Luca said quietly. Victor crossed the room in 2 strides. The panel opened with a soft click. Inside, darkness. And then, 2 eyes, wide, shining, too still. Victor's breath left him all at once. "It's okay," he whispered immediately, dropping to his knees. His voice was no longer the voice that commanded rooms. It was the voice his son knew in the dark. "Papa's here. You can come out." The boy didn't move. His hands were clamped over his mouth, his knees pulled tight to his chest. He was pressed as far back into the narrow cavity as his small body could go, shoulders shaking in silent, practiced restraint. Victor reached in slowly, every movement deliberate, non-threatening. "You did so good," he murmured. "You hid just like Mommy taught you. You did exactly right." That was when the boy's eyes filled, not with fear, with recognition, with the relief of being seen. Victor lifted him gently, pulling him out of the wall and into his arms. The boy clung to him instantly, fingers digging into Victor's coat, breath breaking free in small, hiccuping sobs he had been holding back for far too long. "I didn't make a sound," the boy whispered desperately. "I promise. I didn't." "I know," Victor said, voice thick now. "I know you didn't." Luca turned away, jaw clenched, giving them privacy without being asked. Victor sat on the floor, rocking his son slowly as the boy's breathing evened out. The shaking didn't stop, but the terror softened, replaced by exhaustion and something older, something learned. "Who taught you to hide there?" he asked softly. There was a pause. Then very quietly, the boy answered. "Mommy," he said, "a long time ago." Victor stilled. "She said if the door ever makes the bad noise," the boy continued, words tumbling out now that they'd started. "And she tells me to be brave. I go there. I don't cry. I don't answer. I wait." Victor closed his eyes. "How old were you?" he asked. The boy shrugged, cheek pressed to Victor's chest. "Little. Too little." Victor felt something cold and furious coil inside him. "Maya didn't know," the boy added quickly, as if afraid he'd done something wrong. "Mommy said not to tell. She said the bad man might still remember." Victor's heart slammed. "What bad man?" he asked carefully. The boy hesitated, then whispered, "The one who used to knock when it was dark." Silence fell heavy around them. Victor lifted his head slowly. Luca was watching now, eyes sharp. "The bad man?" Victor repeated. "He smelled like metal," the boy said, "and loud shoes. Mommy said he went away, but sometimes she cried anyway." Victor's jaw tightened until it ached. This wasn't new. This wasn't tonight. This was a threat that had never died, only gone quiet. Victor held his son tighter, feeling the fragile strength in that small body. A child who had learned survival before bedtime stories. A child who knew how to disappear. "We're going to make sure he never comes back," Victor said softly. The boy nodded against his chest, trusting without question. "I waited," he said again, "like you taught me." Victor swallowed hard. "You were perfect," he whispered. "You were so brave." Later, when the apartment was secure and the night finally began to release its grip, Victor stood alone in the hallway, staring at the open wall panel. A hiding place built out of fear. A lesson passed down in whispers. A danger that had followed them longer than he'd known. Victor Vallon had enemies everywhere. But this one had been close enough to teach his child how to vanish. And somewhere in the city, a man who thought he'd been forgotten was about to learn something important. Children who learn to hide grow up, and fathers who discover why never forget. Not ever. The name surfaced the way ghosts always did, quietly, without warning, carried on the breath of a man who thought the past stayed buried. Victor stood in the dim light of the safe room as Luca finished the report, his voice low, careful, as if volume itself might detonate something already volatile. "We ran the prints," Luca said. "Partial, but enough. The angle of entry, the method, the humming." Victor didn't respond. He already knew. "There's only one man who worked like this," Luca continued. "One man who knew your houses, your routines, your family." Victor's fingers curled slowly into a fist. "Say it," he said. Luca hesitated, then, Adrian Kovac. The name landed like a blade. Victor closed his eyes. Adrian Kovac had been one of his earliest mistakes. Not an enemy. Not at first. An ally. A strategist. A man who believed fear was more elegant than violence and patience more lethal than guns. He had been brilliant, loyal once, and dangerously obsessed with leverage. Especially children. Victor had ended him 7 years ago, or so he had believed. Adrian had betrayed the organization, siphoned money, sold names. When Victor discovered it, he'd done what he always did back then. He erased the problem, or thought he had. Confirmed alive? Victor asked. Yeah, Luca said. He disappeared after the incident in Prague. Everyone believed he was dead. Burned body. Dental match. Except... Victor opened his eyes. Except it wasn't him, he finished. Luca nodded. It was a substitute. One of his men. Same height, same build. Adrian planned it years in advance. Victor felt something shift inside his chest. Anger, yes, but underneath it, something colder. Guilt. He watched us, Luca continued. For years. From a distance. He knew when you moved. When you rebuilt. When you became... careful. And he waited, Victor said. Yes. Until I had something worth taking. Silence stretched. Victor turned toward the glass separating the room from the hallway, where his son slept now, curled beneath blankets, watched over by 2 men who would die before letting harm touch him again. Adrian Kovac had once stood in this very building, laughing quietly, saying children were not weaknesses but keys. Victor had dismissed him. That arrogance burned now. He changed the locks from the inside, Victor said slowly. Tilted the camera just enough. Waited for Maya to step out. Luca swallowed. He wanted you to know it was him. Yes, Victor said. He wanted me awake. A pause. He could have taken the boy, Luca said carefully. But he didn't. Victor's gaze hardened. That's because this isn't about ransom, he said. It's about punishment. Victor remembered Prague now, not the violence, but the last conversation. Adrian had smiled then, calm, almost fond. You'll understand one day, he'd said. Power isn't money. It's what you can't replace. Victor had shot him before he could say more, or thought he had. Adrian hadn't come to steal. He'd come to prove something. He wanted my son to hide, Victor said quietly. He wanted him to remember. Luca nodded grimly. The humming. That's what he does when he wants to be remembered. Victor stepped closer to the glass, watching his child sleep. A faint crease marked his brow even in rest, as if vigilance had become instinct. Adrian had taught him that, without ever touching him. I want everything, Victor said. Every contact Adrian has used since he vanished. Shell companies, medical records, anyone who helped fake his death. Yes, sir. And find out who he's been watching besides us. Luca hesitated. You think there are others? I know there are, Victor said. Men like Adrian don't wake up after 7 years just for one act. He turned back, eyes dark, voice steady. He believes I took his life, Victor said. So he came for mine. Luca exhaled slowly. What do you want done? Victor didn't answer immediately. He thought of his son's whispered words. I didn't make a sound. He thought of a hiding place built from fear. He thought of a man who had been supposed to be gone. Adrian doesn't want money, Victor said finally. He wants me to live with knowing he can reach my child. He looked up. That ends now. Luca straightened. No clean solutions, Victor continued. No warnings. No mercy. A pause. But we don't move loudly, Victor added. He wants noise. He wants chaos. We starve him of both. Luca nodded once. And when we find him? Victor's jaw set. Then he learns, Victor said softly, what happens when you teach a child to hide from his father. Outside, dawn crept slowly into the city, pale and indifferent. Somewhere in its shadows, a man who believed himself untouchable was smiling. And for the first time in years, Victor Velen was smiling too. Because Adrian Kovac had made one fatal miscalculation. He hadn't broken Victor. He had reminded him, and there was nothing more dangerous than a man who remembered exactly who he used to be. When there was nothing he wouldn't destroy to protect what was his. The city felt different once the decision was made. Not louder, not quieter, heavier. Victor stood at the window of his office as dawn finished bleeding into morning. The skyline washed in pale gray light. From up here, the city looked obedient. Traffic flowing, people moving to work, unaware that something fundamental had shifted beneath their feet. Behind him, his phone lay face down on the desk. It hadn't stopped vibrating for hours. He ignored it. Protection, Victor knew, was easy when it stayed theoretical. When it meant money changing hands, warnings whispered into the right ears, problems disappearing quietly into the dark. That was the version of power he had mastered. The version that kept balance. The version that kept him untouchable. This wasn't that. Adrian Kovac had crossed a line that couldn't be erased with silence. He had stepped inside Victor's home. He had taught a child how to hide. He had turned fear into inheritance. And Victor refused to pass that down. "Sir," Luca said quietly from the doorway, "if we move the way you're suggesting, there will be consequences." Victor didn't turn. "I know." "The council won't like it," Luca continued. "The old families will see it as instability, exposure." Victor finally faced him. "My son was almost taken," he said evenly. "I don't care what they like." Luca held his gaze. "You're talking about burning channels that took decades to build." "Ye." "Contracts," Luca pressed. "Safe corridors, political cover." "Yes." "And Adrian?" Luca asked. "If we do this your way, he won't just disappear. People will know." Victor's mouth curved into something that wasn't a smile. "They already should." He moved back to the desk and turned the phone face up. Dozens of missed calls, messages stacked like warnings. Victor typed a single message and sent it to every major node in his network. "Stand down. All covert protections are suspended. Full transparency protocol initiated." Luca inhaled sharply. "That's irreversible," Victor finished. "I'm aware." This wasn't about winning quietly. This was about ending it loudly enough that no one ever tried again. Adrian wanted Victor to live in fear. Victor chose to live in daylight. By noon, the city began to feel it. Accounts frozen. Shell companies flagged. Long-buried investigations resurfacing like bones after a flood. Anonymous tips landing on desks that had learned not to ask questions years ago. Victor gave names, real ones, including his own. The council convened within hours. Men who had once spoken to Victor as an equal now looked at him with disbelief, anger, calculation. "You're dismantling the protections that keep us all alive," one of them hissed. "No," Victor replied calmly. "I'm dismantling the ones that protect men like Adrian." "This makes you vulnerable," another snapped. "You'll lose leverage." Victor leaned forward, eyes cold. "I already did," he said, "the moment a man walked into my house." Silence followed. Because they understood then. This wasn't strategy. This was personal. That afternoon, Adrian Kovac was found. Not hiding, not running, waiting. As if he'd expected this outcome. When Victor stood across from him in a stark white room, stripped of all theater, Adrian smiled the same way he always had. Curious, almost affectionate. "You chose the sun," Adrian said softly. "I wondered if you would." Victor said nothing. "You could have erased me," Adrian continued, quietly. "You know how." "Yes," Victor agreed. "I do." "Then why this?" Adrian asked. "Why give up everything?" Victor stepped closer, voice low and unwavering. "Because my son shouldn't grow up thinking monsters only live in the dark," he said. And because I won't teach him that power is worth more than peace." Adrian studied him for a long moment. Then his smile faded. "You've changed," he said. "Yes," Victor replied. "That's the point." The fallout was immediate. Allies distanced themselves, contracts dissolved, power redistributed. Victor Valen, the man who had once ruled from the shadows, became something else entirely. Exposed, limited, free. That night, Victor sat beside his son's bed, watching the slow rise and fall of a chest that no longer shook with fear. The boy slept without hiding, without holding his breath. "Papa?" the child murmured drowsily. "I'm here," Victor said instantly. "Did the bad man go away?" Victor brushed a hand through his hair gently. "Yeah," he said. "And he's not coming back." The boy nodded and drifted back to sleep, trusting completely. Victor stayed there long after. He had lost power. He had lost secrecy. But he had kept the one thing that mattered. And if the city whispered about his fall the next morning, Victor Valen didn't hear it. Because for the first time in years, his house was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from fear, the kind that comes from safety. And that was worth everything. The lock clicked softly this time. Not the sharp, panicked sound that had split the night open. Not the deliberate turn of a stranger's hand. This click was careful, intentional, almost shy. Victor stood in the doorway of his son's room and watched the small figure on the bed sit up, blanket pooled around his waist. Morning light filtered through the curtains in thin gold lines, touching the familiar space with something close to peace. The apartment was quiet now. Safe. "Papa?" his son asked, rubbing his eyes. "I'm here," Victor said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. He didn't lock it. The boy noticed. He always noticed. Victor sat on the edge of the bed, close but not crowding. He had learned that closeness meant different things to children who had learned fear early. You had to offer it, not force it. They stayed quiet for a moment. The kind of quiet that wasn't afraid of being broken. Then the boy spoke. "I locked the door," he said. Victor didn't react. He kept his voice gentle, neutral. "I know." "I wasn't trying to be bad," the boy rushed on, eyes wide. I remembered what Mommy said." Victor's chest tightened. "What did she say?" he asked softly. The boy twisted the blanket between his fingers, a nervous habit Victor had only recently noticed, because now he was looking for it. "She said if someone comes when you're not home," the boy whispered, "I have to make the house quiet, and I have to make it hard." Victor swallowed. "So you locked the door?" The boy nodded. "From the inside. She showed me how. She said it buys time." Time. Victor felt the words settle heavily in his bones. "Why didn't you answer Maya?" he asked gently. "She was scared." The boy's eyes dropped. "I heard her," he admitted. "But the bad man was humming. And Mommy said if someone hums, they're not in a hurry." Victor closed his eyes. "That detail, that memory. That means they think," the boy continued earnestly. "And if they think, they listen. So I stayed very quiet." Victor reached out then, resting his hand over his son's small one. "You did everything right," he said firmly. The boy looked up, searching his face. "I didn't want him to take you away," the boy whispered. "So I made the house not open." Something in Victor broke open quietly. Not shattered. Opened. "You didn't lock me out," Victor said, voice thick. "You protected us." The boy let out a shaky breath, relief washing over his features like he'd been holding onto a question for days. "You're not mad?" "No," Victor said immediately. "I'm proud of you." The boy leaned into him then, forehead pressing against Victor's chest. Not desperate, just trusting. Victor wrapped his arms around him, holding carefully, consciously. "I didn't know you were scared like that," Victor murmured. The boy hesitated, then said something that changed everything. "I didn't know I wasn't supposed to be," he said. Victor's heart clenched painfully. Fear hadn't been a moment in his son's life. It had been a language, a rule book, a way of understanding the world. Victor had protected his child with walls, with men, with systems and silence. But he hadn't protected him from learning how to survive alone. That realization settled deep. "I'm going to do better," Victor said quietly. The boy lifted his head. "How?" Victor met his gaze. "I won't just make the world safe," he said. "I'll make sure you never think you have to handle it by yourself." The boy considered that, then nodded. "Can we not lock the door today?" he asked. Victor smiled softly. "We won't," he promised. Later, Victor removed the internal locking mechanism from the apartment entirely. Not as a reaction, but as a decision. He replaced it with something different, a system that opened, not closed. One that summoned help instead of sealing silence. More importantly, he changed himself. He came home earlier. He listened longer. He paid attention to the small signs, the way his son flinched at certain sounds, the way he memorized exits, the way he watched doors. And every night, without fail, Victor sat with him until he slept. The locks were still there, somewhere in the world, but not between them, because family wasn't something you shut out. Family was something you stayed awake for. And Victor Valenne would never sleep through that responsibility again.